please like, subscribe, and comment. It really helps the channel. Right, ready to jump out of a perfectly good airplane. Metaphorically, of course. We're going to unravel one of America's most puzzling, unsolved mysteries. The case of D.B. Cooper. I mean, you've probably heard the basics right. A guy hijacks the plane back in 1971, demands a big ransom, and then parachutes into the night, never to be seen again. But today, we're going way beyond just the headlines. We're going to look at the clues, the dead ends, and all the crazy theories that have kept this case alive for over 50 years?
What's so fascinating about this case is how, a seemingly simple crime, just a hijacking, turned into this, enigma that still baffles investigators and, armchair detectives, everybody. It just raises so many questions about identity, motive, and, I don't know, even just the nature of truth itself.
Okay, so let's rewind all the way back to November 24th, 1971. Picture this, all right? A Boeing 727 cruising at 30,000 feet. Our man, going by the alias Dan Cooper, blends right in with the other passengers. He's calm, well-dressed, and just hands a note to a flight attendant. But this note, it's not asking for, another ginger ale or something. It says, "I have a bomb."
Yeah, and that's when things get serious. See, Cooper, unlike a lot of hijackers, driven by desperation or some political thing, he was incredibly meticulous. He had this briefcase, not with family photos or anything, but with wires and red sticks, making that threat very real. His demands were super specific, too. $200,000 in cash, 4 parachutes, and a fuel truck ready and waiting for him in Seattle.
So he had a checklist, like hijacking for dummies or something.
Yeah.
So the authorities, obviously they're thinking about the safety of all the passengers and crew, so they agree to his demands. The plane lands in Seattle, they deliver the ransom, and they let all the passengers go. So far, so good, right? But Cooper, he's not done yet. He keeps the pilots and a few of the crew members on board, and he tells them to take off again. This time, they're heading south towards Mexico.
See, this is where Cooper's plan goes off script. This is where the real mystery starts. He didn't want to, escape to another country or make some big political statement. He had something else entirely in mind.
So picture the plane flying low. It's dark, and they're somewhere over those thick forests of southwest Washington state. That's when Cooper decides to make his move. He opens up the rear stairs of the 727.
Yeah, these older models actually had stairs you could lower during flight, and with the money strapped to his chest and a parachute on his back, he just jumps right into the stormy night. Think about that for a second. I mean, the audacity. No fancy equipment, no GPS, no team waiting for him on the ground, at least not that we know of. It was just him, $200,000, and a parachute, disappearing into this huge wilderness. It's like he just stepped into thin air. Poof. Gone.
So, of course, the FBI launches this massive manhunt. They're scouring the whole area where they think Cooper jumped. But even with all that effort, they find nothing. No body, no parachute, no sign of Cooper. It's like he vanished. Just a few, almost like breadcrumbs of clues left behind.
Yeah, this is part of what makes this case so fascinating. There's barely any conclusive evidence. It's like this giant puzzle, but with most of the pieces missing, which of course leads to tons of speculation and all these theories.
Let's talk about some of those clues. So fast forward to 1980, almost a decade after the hijacking. This young boy's playing along the Columbia River. What does he find? A bundle of, get this, decayed $20 bills buried in the sand. Talk about finding buried treasure.
And the crazy thing is, the serial numbers on those bills matched the ransom money. So we know at least some of Cooper's loot actually made it to the ground. But what's so weird is that it was only a tiny part of the total amount, a little over $5,800. Where'd the rest of the money go? Did he lose it during the jump, or was this just pocket change for him? Who knows?
Now, this next clue is a little bit more, CSI. Turns out Cooper left a tie clip on the plane, a simple black one. But the FBI, they managed to get some DNA from it.
This was way back in the early days of DNA tech, though. They couldn't just run it through a database and get a match like you can now. But that DNA sample, it's still out there. It's like a ticking time bomb waiting to, maybe blow this case wide open.
Imagine if, some distant relative of Cooper uploads their DNA to one of those ancestry sites. That could be the missing link. Talk about a family reunion you wouldn't want to go to. So over the years, the FBI investigated hundreds of possible suspects, but nothing ever really panned out. Cooper just didn't leave much to go on. No fingerprints, no clear motive, no known accomplices. He was like a phantom, a ghost that appeared just long enough to pull off this insane heist.
It's incredible, really.
All right, so we set the scene. We've got our mysterious hijacker, the crazy escape, and this trail of clues that leads to, well, more questions than answers. Now let's get into some of the most compelling theories about who D.B. Cooper was and what actually happened to him. Buckle up. Things are about to get even more interesting.
So one of the most, I guess, popular theories is that Cooper was like a skilled parachutist, maybe even possibly with some military background. Some folks even think he could have been a former paratrooper or even like special ops.
Yeah, I mean, I can kind of see why people would think that. His whole, knowledge of parachutes, the specific demands he made for that ransom drop, and how calm he was under pressure, it all points to someone with some serious, specialized training.
Exactly. Like, look at the types of parachutes he asked for. They weren't just your average skydiving gear. They were military-grade chutes, the kind used for static line jumps. That suggests he knew his way around military procedures. And then think about how he, like, controlled the whole situation on that plane. He was assertive, sure, but not, like, aggressive or anything, methodical in his instructions. That's not some amateur, right?
So if he had all these skills, then why would he, I don't know, resort to hijacking a plane? Was he desperate? Or like disgruntled with something? Maybe he was just looking for one last crazy adrenaline rush. What do you think?
It really is a puzzle, isn't it? What would make someone with those kinds of skills do something so risky?
Yeah.
I mean, some people think he might have been a Vietnam War vet who was having trouble, adjusting to civilian life. Others think maybe he was involved in some shady business and needed to disappear, like, fast. We might never know the whole story, but it's those unanswered questions that I think keep us all so fascinated, right?
Totally. Okay, so let's say he did survive the jump. Then what? Could he really just, I don't know, disappear with all that money and start a whole new life? Like, just vanish?
It's not as crazy as it sounds, actually. I mean, remember, this was way before, security cameras were everywhere, before we all had these digital footprints and stuff. If he had a new identity and a pile of cash, it's totally possible he could have just, like, blended back into society. No one the wiser.
But wouldn't it be hard to resist spending that money?
Yeah.
$200,000 back in 71, that's like serious money. I mean, I know I'd be tempted to splurge a little, wouldn't you?
Uh-huh, probably. But think about it. The fact that some of the ransom money was found buried, that suggests maybe he was disciplined about it, playing the long game. Maybe he saw it as like a safety net, a way to make sure he stayed free, not a chance to live it up.
That's a good point. Okay, now let's just, go down the rabbit hole of conspiracy theories for a second. Some people actually believe Cooper had help. Like it was an inside job. Maybe even someone from the airline or even like law enforcement. What do you think about that?
Yeah. Anytime you have a case this weird, those kinds of theories are going to pop up. And, it does make you wonder, like he had such detailed knowledge of the plane, the procedures, the ransom drop location. It makes you think maybe he did have some inside info.
Right. And then there's the fact that the FBI, with like all their resources, they couldn't find him. Does that mean like there was a cover-up or something? Or was Cooper just that good at disappearing?
It's tempting to think there was some big conspiracy, but I don't know. There's just no real evidence for it. I think it's more likely that Cooper was just super careful, that he planned everything out perfectly. No loose ends for the authorities to grab onto.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so we've got the, trained parachutist theory, the desperate veteran, the criminal mastermind. But what about the idea that maybe he didn't actually survive the jump at all? Like, what if he died that night?
That's definitely something we got to consider. I mean, the conditions were rough, right? Stormy night, freezing temperatures, not exactly the most welcoming terrain. And Cooper, well, he wasn't exactly dressed for an Arctic expedition, was he? He jumped with that money strapped to him, no special gear, no survival stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I'm no expert, but jumping out into the wilderness in the dark with a bunch of money tied to you, it doesn't exactly sound like a recipe for success.
Exactly. He could have easily gotten hurt when he landed or, died from the cold, gotten lost in the dark. If that's what happened, his body could still be out there somewhere, lost in the wilderness, just waiting to be found.
That's a creepy thought. It just adds another layer to this whole crazy mystery.
It does. And then there's that whole thing about the ransom money, right? Why would someone bury part of their loot like that? What do you think?
It's almost like he was, I don't know, leaving a trail of breadcrumbs, like a clue to his fate. Maybe he buried it as a backup plan. If he survived, he could come back for it later. Right. Or maybe, I don't know, maybe he was trying to lighten his load before the jump. Too much weight,
Maybe. And then the location where that money was found, that adds another wrinkle, right? It was along the Columbia River, which wasn't actually on the predicted flight path. So that makes you think, maybe we don't have the plane's tracking data quite right. Maybe Cooper jumped somewhere else entirely.
Wow. So we've got this puzzle where some pieces seem to fit, but then there's always another piece that just throws everything off.
Yeah.
Why do you think this case is so, I don't know, enduring? Like, why are we still talking about it after all these years?
I think it's a story that just taps into our fascination with the unknown. We love unsolved mysteries. We want to believe that someone can outsmart the system, that
Right.
they can just disappear and live this life of freedom and adventure.
Yeah, and with Cooper, it's like he didn't hurt anyone, right? He wasn't violent. He was even, like, polite, charming, almost. It's like he was playing a game, this high-stakes game of cat and mouse with the authority.
Oh, he definitely played it well. And even though he's still, a fugitive, his stories become this legend, a legend that's inspired, I don't even know how many books, movies, TV shows, and, endless speculation.
Yeah, it's amazing how this one event has had such a lasting impact on, like, all of pop culture.
It really is. It speaks to our need for stories,
Yeah.
for heroes and anti-heroes. Cooper, in a way, he's both, right? He's a criminal, yeah, but he's also this master of disguise, a brilliant strategist, and a symbol of, I don't know, rebellion against authority, maybe? He represents this allure of the unknown, that possibility of escape,
Yeah.
and the power of, like, a really good mystery.
And speaking of impact, let's talk about the, I guess, ripple effects of Cooper's hijacking beyond just pop culture. I mean, this wasn't just a story, right? It was a real event that exposed some, like, serious vulnerabilities in how we did airport security. And it kind of forced the industry to make some big changes. It's crazy to think that, we can get so caught up in the mystery and the theories that we forget D.B. Cooper's actions had, like, real-world consequences. This wasn't just a game, right? It was a serious crime. And it showed everyone just how vulnerable air travel security was back then.
Yeah, and it's pretty amazing how quickly things changed after the Cooper hijacking. I mean, before 1971, airport security was, well, it was pretty much non-existent. Passengers could just walk right up to the gate. No screening, no nothing. It was a different world. Cooper's hijacking, it was like a wake-up call, like, hello, anyone can exploit this system.
Yeah, for sure. So what exactly changed? Did airports just become Fort Knox overnight? Like, what happened?
Not quite, haha, but it was a big shift. I mean, one of the most, I guess, immediate and impactful changes was they started using metal detectors in airports all over the country, which sounds like a no-brainer now, right? But back then it was like, whoa, this is revolutionary.
I know, right? I can't even imagine walking through an airport today without, those beeps and security checks. It's just part of the routine now.
Exactly. And it wasn't just metal detectors. The Cooper case also led to, like, way stricter passenger screening. X-ray machines became the norm for checking luggage, and airlines started training their staff to be more aware of, suspicious behavior. Like, is that guy acting weird? Maybe we should check him out.
So basically, we can thank D.B. Cooper for those lovely security lines we all know and love today.
Well, maybe thank is a bit strong. But his actions definitely made the aviation industry realize, hey, we need to take security way more seriously. And those changes, even though they can be a pain sometimes, they've definitely made flying a lot safer for all of us.
It really is fascinating how one event can change the way we do things in such a, I don't know, fundamental way.
Yeah, it's a perfect example of how a crisis, even a bad one, can lead to some real innovation. And in this case, those innovations were all about protecting people and stopping future hijackings. But the changes, well, they didn't stop there.
Oh, what else changed?
Well, the Cooper case also had a direct impact on how they designed airplanes. Some Boeing 727s, the same model Cooper used, they actually retrofitted them with something called a Cooper vane.
A Cooper vane. That sounds interesting. What is that exactly?
It's actually pretty simple. It's a mechanical device that stops the rear stairs from being opened during flight. Basically, they made it impossible to pull off another Cooper move.
Ah, so no more midair escapes for aspiring skyjackers.
Exactly. It was a pretty straightforward fix for a very specific problem. But it shows just how seriously the aviation industry was taking this whole Cooper thing. Like, we don't want this to happen again, ever.
It's kind of ironic, right? Even though they never caught him, D.B. Cooper actually ended up making flying safer. Who would have thought?
Yeah, it is, kinda. His crime was dangerous and reckless, no doubt. But it also made the industry face its weaknesses head on. And that led to solutions that, well, like we said, made flying safer for everyone.
It's a good reminder that sometimes even bad events can lead to something good, as long as we, take the time to learn from them.
Right. And that learning process, well, it's still going on. Security experts still study the Cooper case. They use it to try to find, vulnerabilities and to come up with new ways to prevent similar things from happening. They're always looking at his methods, his planning, the things that went wrong and allowed him to pull it off. It's all about staying ahead of the game, making sure no one else can try what he did.
So, in a way, D.B. Cooper's legacy is still alive and well. Not just in, like, pop culture and all that, but in how we think about airline safety today. It's like a reminder to never get complacent.
Exactly. We have to be aware, be ready to adapt, and always look for ways to make security better. And in a way, we owe some of that to the guy who, outsmarted everyone over 50 years ago.
That's pretty deep. Okay, before we wrap things up, I have one last question for you.
Yeah.
If D.B. Cooper were alive today, what do you think he'd make of all this? The fame, all the theories, the fact that he's become this, cultural icon.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
It's tough to say for sure, but I imagine he'd be, I don't know, maybe a little amused, a little confused by it all. Maybe even a bit bummed that no one ever figured out who he really was, that his true identity is still a secret.
Maybe he's out there somewhere right now listening to us and just, chuckling to himself about how he pulled off the perfect crime and became a legend.
Uh-huh. You never know. But whether he's out there or not, his story, it still grabs us, He became the symbol of the unknown, a reminder that there are still mysteries in the world that we just can't explain.
And maybe that's what makes this whole thing so captivating. It's a story that makes us think about the unknown, to grapple with all the, unanswered questions. And to accept that sometimes the best stories are the ones that leave us with more questions than answers.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up our deep dive into the D.B. Cooper case. We've gone through the evidence, the theories, how it all impacted culture, and the lasting legacy of this mysterious guy.
We've looked at the clues, thought about the possibilities, and hopefully, given you a better understanding of the mystery that is D.B. Cooper. And hey, who knows, maybe someday someone will finally crack the case. But until then, the speculation's going to keep going.
And the legend lives on.
Please like, subscribe, and comment. It really helps the channel. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep that mystery alive.